Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Good morning to you, ANITA. And as you said, it's been a very eventful week for me. And I'll get to it real quick. It's a lot to cover. As you know, for the past few months, I've been doing this book on Donald Trump. And it was ready to roll. And big publicity campaign. Barnes & Noble was going to display it in every window in its stores across America. And at the last minute, in America at least, the plug was pulled, and the book is not coming out, at least not when I thought it was.
Why?
This is a long and complicated story. It has to do with Donald Trump, the First Amendment. I'm not certain of all of the details, but I think Trump's lawyers, who've never even seen the book, have threatened all sorts of things, and I can give you the background of why these threats are to be taken seriously. And now, I will say this, the book is being published, but it will be published in foreign editions in the next few weeks. For example, I just sent it off to Korea. I've never had a book published in Korea before. The whole world is interested in Donald Trump. But here is the problem. I was hoping to be the first on the market, which covered not only Trump's former life, the pre-presidential race life, but his race for the White House, which I think is a hell of a story. When you put it all together, it's a fascinating read. But now, Trump has practiced in the past what he calls revenge lawsuits, and it's an intimidation. Now, it's worked in several cases. For example, a writer called Timothy O'Brien wrote a book called Trump Nation, which questioned Trump's lack of all the billions that he claims he has. And he tied this writer up for 2 years of expensive litigation. Of course, when it reached the judge threw it out. But that, in the meantime, you can run up $1 million in legal bills. And he knew he wouldn't win. But in fact, I have a quote from him. He talked about he had to spend a couple of bucks. He spent more than that on legal fees, and they spent a hell of a lot more. I did it to make O'Brien's life miserable, and I'm very happy about that.
Well, let me just suggest something. I think that Warren Buffett is so much on your team. He has the money to spend. I would go ahead and do it and ask him, will you take care of the legal bills? I'll bet he would.
Well, 2 or 3 offers like that have been made, but at the moment, I don't know. I might just want to sit this out. And, I was asked by my company to do this book. It was not my, I had another program, and I'm back to my original program. I don't know what to do at the moment. I certainly am going to make the foreign deals, I think the book will be published in English, but in London. And now, I saw what happened to Timothy O'Brien. Now, Norton, a very famous publishing house, did a book on Trump called Lost Tycoon in 1993. That was at the time he was divorcing Ivana, his first wife. And now would be the book is so rather interesting about all the deals and the women and a lot of things. But Norton has now withdrawn, and I think they were threatened. There is a book that has come out about what happens when lawyers vet it, and it's called The Making of Donald Trump. And it's not a long book, but it has been so vetted that I think it's completely lost its power. Let me give you an example. I just got my copy yesterday, and it really doesn't tell you very much. after the lawyers went over it, I think they removed 200 pages. I'll give you an example. The first thing I looked up was Melania, his wife, to see what this, because I have extensive stuff on the would-be First Lady. And would you believe there's only one line about Melania in this new book that's out? It says, in 2005, Donald Trump flew to Colorado to give a motivational speech. He was accompanied by his wife, Melania. That's it.
Kidding.
And that's all he said.
This is really outrageous, actually. You know that. And of course, we just put out our August issue, and we did put in your blurb about it coming out in September.
Well, technically, that will be true.
Right. Just not. Well, let me ask you, what's the difference if it's published here? Darwin, what's the difference if it's published here or abroad?
Well, he doesn't pursue lawsuits in Peking and in Paris and Stockholm and Berlin.
Not yet.
Not yet, but here is what is shaping up, because we're dealing now with the First Amendment, and Trump on the campaign trail says he wants to. Now, I don't how he's going to do this. He doesn't say, to rewrite all the libel laws in New York so that he can sue the New York Times, the New York Daily News, the Los Angeles Times, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that will ever happen. First, he'll have to become president, and then he would have to do this. And it almost seems just one of those impossible things. But I do know a little bit about presidential libel. I've studied libel for 2 or 3 years. And when you run for president, and this has been established ever since Thomas Jefferson called John Adams a hermaphrodite. That was the beginning of the attacks on the presidents. An hermaphrodite, my God, that was a first for me. I never heard a president call that before. But if you run for president, you more or less give up your privacy for libel. It has been ascertained that the public should know as much about the person who wants to run the country as possible. In fact, I could find no libel suit at all that has, for example, Hillary Clinton is libeled every day. I mean, serious libel. Trump gave a speech about her last night that if you did that to another individual, they would have a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against you. But she's been libeled for years. I mean, she's been accused of not only the murder of Vince Foster, but she and Bill were accused of murdering 28 people in Arkansas and running a drug cartel from South America, landing planes in northwestern Arkansas. During his administration, when he was president, Lyndon Johnson, there were 3 books out that he plotted the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Well, God, if that's not libelous, what is? But Trump knows that he would not win in these libel suits. He's never done that. Every day I read columns about him that could be libelous, but he calls it revenge. In fact, he gave a speech in Colorado where he recommended companies that have lawyers on where they retain lawyers as staff, that if a employee starts to act up, now what does that mean? Maybe bring a sexual harassment suit or something, that you can have lawyers to destroy them before the case reaches court. It's a strange new turn in American politics. There's never been something like this, and I'm not particularly interested right now in spending my next 2 years fighting this. It can be very costly. For example, there was this nutbag who sued me for running a 20th Century Fox picture taken on the set of Marilyn Monroe's last picture. She said she didn't even know Marilyn Monroe. It turned out it was a publicity picture from 20th Century Fox that was submitted to the press. But just before, even just beginning to knock down a lawsuit, I got a bill from attorneys for $175,000, and the case had months to go before it even reached court. So you see, for a writer and a publishing house, a Trump possible lawsuit, knowing he would lose, could cost maybe $2 million before it reached the courts. So now this will be an intimidation, but I know there are many people writing books about Trump now, because they said so on TV news when these talking heads who come on, and it's going to be very interesting. He can't fight them all. The tide will turn against him. They do have the First Amendment on their right. Now, 2 or 3 publishers have already given in to him and their threats, but I don't think it will stop the flow, because Trump has now entered history, and his campaign is unique in the history of the Republic. So it will be documented, and I think he can cause a lot of people a lot of trouble.
My question is this. Have the newscasters heard of what's happening? I haven't heard this before you. Why at least don't you tell people so it comes out? Even that in itself, I think, would be very interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because it is a First Amendment issue with people who write books and people who publish newspapers. I know he almost every. Let me give you an example of the latest threat. He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal with Tony Schwartz.
Oh, that's right. I heard that whole story when he really didn't write it.
No, he didn't write it himself. Tony Schwartz
wrote it.
Now, he's a very respected journalist. Well, Trump says he's filing a lawsuit against Tony Schwartz, going to sue him for millions, and it was a 50-50 deal. And Schwartz made a lot of money off of that. But then he's given an interview in which he said the book should not be called The Art of the Deal, but The Sociopath.
I know. He did that on Bill Maher's show. I heard it.
Oh, did you?
I heard the whole interview, yes. And he's going to sue him for that now?
Yes, he just announced that he's going to sue, and he's going to demand return of all the royalties, which I think might be $2 million now, and plus interest.
Right? Well, the interesting thing is he knew when he came out about it that I'm sure he lined up a lot of people to help him with it, because he knew that when he spilled the beans, it wasn't going to be casual.
Yes, right. I'm amazed he did it. I really am.
I was proud of him, actually.
Yeah, but in a way, it's asking for trouble. At first, I was shocked by this, but yet on the other hand, I know how tedious these things are, and after some of the experiences I've had in my past, I really don't want to do it.
Let me say this, Darwin. I really do appreciate you. And you have a lovely life, even though you work very hard. You really don't need the negativity in your life. And I'm proud of you for saying, okay, it's not going to make it. If I do, it's going to make a big difference in my life. If I don't do it, so ho-hum. It'll still be there to come out.
I am totally prepared that this book is a historical document about he's probably the most famous man in the world. And it's not, I might have 8 or 9 editions of this book on my shelf.
Sure.
In languages I can't read.
Sure.
Although I can read I have a publisher in London who's been wanting to do my books for years, and there's a great interest in Trump in England. I'm sure you've.
Oh right, yeah, I read all about it.
So maybe we'll have the English edition smuggled in. Now, I might publish the book in May or in June.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I read it over, and it's just not to be believed. believed. I mean, I say that only in the sense I can't believe people said what they are saying, but they did. But when you put it all together, you hear it right now, you hear it in sound bites every night, but when you put it all together, it's rather a stunning document.
You know, it may be better when he loses to come out and do it, because he won't be able to blame you for losing.
That's right. That's right. But there will be other,
Oh, yeah.
It will be interesting to see how he deals with these other writers. Now, speaking of libel, I don't know if it's played up in the Florida papers. Have you seen the nude photographs of his would-be First Lady?
Oh, yes. I have seen it. And they're going after her for immigration, that she... whether it's true or not that she was working when she wasn't supposed to be working. But, normally that wouldn't bother anybody. It's just he's made such a big deal about it.
That's right. So that's been publicized in the Florida newspapers?
Oh, yes.
Have they run the actual pictures?
I don't. Let's see. I guess I was looking at maybe in the Inquirer. I'm not sure now, but I know I've seen it on television.
Yeah, well, I certainly I picked up the New York. Now I knew the origin of this. For many years I wrote a book on Paris, and I remember once when I was updating the 1996 edition of Paris, there was a magazine called Max, and it was sort of like a French Playboy, and I saw these pictures, and I didn't know who this woman was. She was identified as Melania K, just not her last name, just a K. And they also, I don't know if you've seen these on television. I don't know how they could show them, but she did these lesbian bondage pictures, like getting whipped.
You're kidding.
By this beautiful Scandinavian model.
Oh, my goodness. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, remember, it was pictures like that got Vanessa Williams denied the first African-American Miss America.
Right.
They discovered these lesbian bondage pictures. But the photographer is Alexander de Bosville, and he took them, and it was right. The stories are right that she did take pose for this and took modeling jobs in 1995, although she says she didn't enter the country until 1996. But she was working illegally. And what's interesting is Trump said he's going to get rid of people like that, and of course it affects his own wife. But everything about Trump, it's like there's a scandal a minute.
Did you hear the latest that he doesn't want people to refer to him as Donald Trump, but Mr. President?
Mr. President.
Yeah, that's the latest.
Well, he may never be that. But, by the way, I did not write an anti-Trump or a pro-Trump book. I took the subject like a reporter reporting on the events of his life, which are extraordinary. I mean, I've studied the history of presidents and their first ladies. I've never seen a story like this before. but he is a possible danger for writers and publishers. I read a column yesterday by actually a Pulitzer Prize winner reporter who wrote a column that he's insane. Now, to me, when I studied libel, that is libelous. But newspapers are coming out. So far, to my knowledge, he's not sued any newspaper. He keeps threatening the New York Times, but he's not filed any lawsuits that I know of. And I don't know what he's going to do with the New York Post. The New York Post, oddly enough, the paper that did all these lesbian bondage, I didn't want Melania to get whipped by a big bull whip. I will say this. She is a beautiful woman. An utterly beautiful. And some of the headline writers are wrong. This is not the first time that a first lady or a possible first lady has been exposed in the nude, because millennials will think that, but we baby boomers know that Jackie Kennedy was the first lady to have actually has a book of nudes out on Jackie Kennedy. Do you remember the story of how that happened?
Sure, she was over there in the Greek islands, right?
Yes, and on Onassis
sure.
private island.
Yeah, but that wasn't that she did something intentionally. This was private, and they just got her.
Of course.
Yeah.
Enormous. And, of course, Onassis set it up, and I think he was mad at her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. In fact, in my book on Jackie Kennedy.
I forgot that.
He was angry at her and thought she was too uppity. I don't know how to say uppity in Greece.
Okay.
In Greek.
Uppity, that's a good word.
So he hired the photographers to do it.
I didn't know that.
Now, her mistake was running from her private quarters into the garden, with all these telephoto lenses and everything. If you don't want nude pictures taken of yourself, don't go out in the garden. So he had them waiting right offshore, and then they snapped off. He had about 3 of them, and I don't know if she ever found out that he was responsible. So she had to endure the humiliation of those very private pictures. And whereas your point is correct, Melania Kay was paid for this and did it as a model assignment,
Yeah, and really it wouldn't matter to any of us if it weren't that he's, the way he talks about it all. But we have about a minute or so left, and this was astonishing. I didn't know this was going to happen this morning. My goodness, Darwin. We'll have to talk about this personally when I get home.
Yeah, I didn't know about this either, but I'm going on. I'm back on my production track. I have a new book that's almost overdue, and
what is it? What's your next book?
My next book is Lana Turner, Hearts and Diamonds Take All. Lana Turner was one of the great, and you and I know that, and maybe millennials don't, was one of the great love goddesses of the screen, and her full story has never been told.
Okay.
It's one of the most fascinating. So I'm returning to the Hollywood beat, and for the moment...
Let everybody else to do everything about Donald Trump. You don't need to, right? You just save it. Save it for another day. You never know what may happen.
Yes, but in the meantime, I'll be reading it in Chinese and Korean and even Turkish. I don't know how to read Turkish.
That is amazing. And so what really surprises me is that he isn't going to go after any of them. You never know about that, too. You never know.
But they're moving ahead. They're not timid. I mean, some of these American publishers have been. But it's going to be very interesting to see post-election what books might come out and how they do it.
Right.
And I think I may sit back.
Right. Sit back, Darwin. Sit back and thank you very much for doing this with us this morning. It's just always a pleasure. And we'll talk about this later. I have a big smile on my face.
So you have a great show.
You too. Thank you, Darwin.
Bye.
Bye.